Council to order for March 26, 2012. May I have the introduction of late items, Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At item 7A, Mayor's Report, update on the Corporate Strategic Plan. Replace pages 41 and 42 of Staff Report, item 11C, Proposed Safer Nanaimo Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. Add item 13A, Reconsideration of Bylaws, Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2012, number 4500.013 for adoption. Replace pages 76 and 77, Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2012, number 4500.014. Add item 17A, Council Appointments, ratify the appointment of Councillor Pache to the Access Nanaimo Committee.
And is there any other items, Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add a notice of motion under number 18 in regards to our Finance Policy Committee of the Whole meetings.
So notice of motion under 18A, that will be. Any other items?
Yes, Your Worship. I would like, I've been asked by one of the delegations if we'd be so kind as to move her, it's June Ross, from 20A to 6, I guess it would be 6B.
Yes. May I have a seconder for the motion? Is there a seconder?
Second.
Yes. Is there discussion? Mr. Pache.
Thank you, Worship. Well, as much as I love Ms. Ross and her cause, I am not going to be voting for this, and there's a reason for it. We have a tacit understanding, I believe, that it has to be of a really urgent matter when we move things to the 4th. We do have developers here, we have consultants who need to be paid for the time that they spend here, and that is my main reason for not supporting this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. There's a motion on the floor to move item 20A forward, which would be 6B at that point, and the motion has been seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Greaves, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Pache, and Councillor Anderson opposed. The motion fails for a tie. Okay. So, now, adoption of the minutes as circulated.
Moved adoption of the minutes.
Moved, seconded.
Your Worship. Excuse me.
Any question?
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. We haven't voted on the adoption of the agenda as amended.
Oh, I missed already? Okay. So, a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carry on. Thank you, Ms. Harrison. I know you'll keep me on track. So, adoption of the minutes.
Move adoption of March 12th minutes as circulated.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now on to presentations. Mrs. Susan Clift, Director of Engineering and Public Works, and Mr. Bill Sims, Manager of Water Resources, to give a presentation on the water treatment plant reservoir number 1. Ms. Clift.
Presentation tonight will actually be given by Mr. Bill Sims, who is the Manager of Water Resources for the City of Nanaimo. And what he will be speaking about this evening is the status of our project on the water treatment plant. That includes reservoir number 1 as well as the associated pipelines for the project. He'll talk about the scope of the work. He'll talk about the budget to date and also what you can expect to see. And the reason why we're here is that you're going to see some action on the ground, and that's what Bill will also be talking about. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Ms. Cliff. Members of Council. So as Council is well aware, and for the refreshment of the public's mind, the main reason we're constructing the water treatment plant is we've been mandated by VHA to do so, and there are changes to our operating permit requiring that we provide filtration. It ties in nicely with one of the primary goals in the Water Supply Strategic Plan, which is to provide safe drinking water. So we'll be talking tonight about there's 3 projects, but they're all bundled into one. The main one is the water treatment plant. The second one is the enclosed storage to replace the old number 1 reservoir. And the third one is the pipelines that supply both these projects. So just as a matter of geography, in the upper right corner of the screen, you can see the estuary, the southern part of the city. The reservoir is adjacent to Nanaimo Lakes Road and the Nanaimo Parkway. The little red line represents its pipeline. The water treatment plant is at the bottom of the screen, at close to it's on South Forks Road and close to Nanaimo River Road. And the red line ties into our existing raw water supply mains. So where are we at? Our detailed design consultants, Associated Engineering, their subconsultants, Coors and Associates, are well underway on all of the projects or all of the work with their detailed design. We received notification last month that the Crown, the provincial Crown, had transferred the money or transferred the land over to the city. And that was many years of work on the part of our real estate department. As well as many members of council are aware, last summer at the regional district we successfully received rezoning of the property as well as subdivision. Council awarded the membrane supply contract last fall, and that design, that company GE is busy working away at doing their design work. They're also demonstrating their equipment, testing our raw water again. And we're about ready to pull the trigger on pre-qualifying pipe suppliers, pipe contractors, and general contractors. Just an architectural sketch or rendering of the plant itself, and it's solid, durable materials. We expect that this building will be here for a long, long time, and kind of representative of clean water. And just briefly, an oblique view. This is done in Google SketchUp, kind of a handy little tool. It probably best viewed on the city's website, and if you're interested, I can send you a link of the 3D model, and it's just a little fly-through of the model, traces the path of the water. It's kind of fun. As for our replacement reservoir and energy recovery facility, this is along the Nanaimo Lakes Road, again, an architectural rendering. And the roof, according to the architect, is to represent falling water. So it just kind of ties in nicely with the tree theme as well. So as Council is well aware, we've received funding from the federal provincial governments under the Building Canada Fund for almost $18 million. Just recently this year, we were notified that we were successful in receiving $7.8 million towards the reservoir and the energy recovery. Last summer, the borrowing was approved. Council passed a borrowing bylaw for up to $22.5 million. So as I mentioned, we're about ready to go with pre-qualification of pipe suppliers. Excuse me. This is a major project for pipe suppliers and highly specialized type of pipe, large diameter, and will likely be pulling in from certainly North America, potentially around the world. General contractors and subcontractors will be pre-qualified later in the spring. We'll work away at completing the detailed design, and then this summer we'll tender both projects' pipelines all in one package in order to save money and for efficiency. And we expect late summer, early fall to begin construction of the pipelines, with the buildings and the reservoir itself to be tendered later in the year. So just to refresh on the budget, the overall budget for the water treatment plant stands at $65 million. We're aiming to drive that down with some further value engineering, and we're mandated by VHA to be up and running 3 years today, 21st of March 2015. And $11.2 million is the overall budget for the Reservoir Number 1 Energy Recovery Project. That includes engineering contingencies, the pipelines, everything you can think of, even a bit for inflation. So one of the unique things about the water treatment plant project is that most membrane plants and several treatment plants require pumping. In this case, we're blessed with gravity, we're blessed with topography, and we're going to use siphon to draw water through the membranes. So in other words, we save hundreds of thousands in power costs a year by doing this. Some other sustainable design objectives that we're looking at is on-site stormwater management. We've kept the clearing footprint of the property to a minimum. And to heat the building, we'll be using latent heat in the water and extracting that with a heat pump. Similarly, doing the same thing at the Reservoir Number 1 Energy Recovery Building. But the big news is really that we can anticipate $90,000 to $100,000 a year in revenue from the sale of power to the grid. And the project's been designed to minimize the impact to the Chase. So over the next couple of months, you can expect to start to see large tenders coming in and rolling in. As I mentioned, the pipe and valve will be pre-purchased because they're long delivery times, 18 to 20 weeks. And then we'll start to tender the pipelines. At the water treatment plant site, the province reserved the timber on the property, and they've contracted with Nanaimo to log the property, so that should be happening late April or May. As part of the pipeline contract for Reservoir Number 1, we'll do some clearing of the reservoir site, and it will be visible. That's likely to occur in the fall. So just another oblique view. I seem to love Google Earth. So this is as if we were hovering over the Nanaimo River, looking north. You can see the water at the top of the screen. All the blue spidery lines represent our network of water mains throughout the entire city. The water treatment plant and property is sort of center screen, and it's two interconnecting pipelines. Number 1 reservoir is where the little red bubble, or pardon me, yellow bubble is. This is the opposite view, hovering over, let's say, VIU. We're looking south. That's the Armory on the lower right, Colliery Dams Park in the center, Harewood to the left, and you can see the location of the new Number 1 reservoir. We'll come up with a better name. Along the Nanaimo Lakes Road, adjacent to the parkway. I just thought I'd give you a preview of the site footprint at the reservoir site. So in the very top left corner, you can see the parkway and Nanaimo Lakes Road across the top of the screen. There's the footprint of the reservoir. It's about 50 meters in diameter, and that's on the left. The center of the screen comprises the energy recovery facility, and the red and green and blue lines angling off to the right are the water mains and sewer from the site. So this council is showing a similar vision to the councils of the late 1920s when they built South Fork Dam. We're still using it today, 80-odd years later. And likewise, this water treatment plant, this reservoir, the energy recovery facility will all be in use 80 years plus from today. So I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
I have two questions, Your Worship. First one, Mr. Sims, thank you for your presentation. Can you elaborate just quickly on the issue of VHA and their role in this? That in fact these are the Canadian drinking water standards that they've simply been given the task of enforcing.
The Canadian government, Health Canada, sets guidelines, and it's up to each province to regulate the treatment or water quality standards. So Vancouver Island and Health Authority in British Columbia has been mandated with that regulation. So they've developed a policy, and they usually look to other jurisdictions, such as the Canadian Drinking Water Quality Guidelines, for what they should put in their policy. So that's where the mandate comes from.
Your Worship, can I have one more? Thank you. I know you live and breathe this stuff. We actually have 3 significant water initiatives underway simultaneously. For the benefit of the audience and the viewing audience, could you just quickly, just in a minute or less, explain what those are?
So the 3 major initiatives are the water treatment plant that we've just covered. That's well underway, and it's really solid. The other 2 that you're referring to is looking at expanding our water supply. And that consists of two options. We're studying both options at the same time. One of those is perhaps another dam in the watershed. We're looking into that right now. We have an engineering consultant on board doing that for us. The other option is, of course, partnering with Nanaimo Forest Products in some means to reach some sort of a water sharing agreement with them. So
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Sims. Just a question. We're mandated by BIHA to provide quality drinking water, and we, of course, are looking at the quantity of drinking or water, period, come 2020. So my question is, as it relates to BIHA's mandate of quality drinking water, and primarily it's to prevent two diseases, if you will, Cryptosporia and Giardia. Are there any recorded cases in Nanaimo of either one of those diseases from poor quality drinking water?
Not that I'm aware of. However, the Ministry of Health does not provide that information or doesn't provide that data.
Thank you.
No follow-up. Councillor Padgett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sims, thank you for your presentation. I may have missed this, but the total cost of reservoir number 1 is $11.2 million. Correct. What grant money is involved in that?
We just recently received grant money from the gas tax fund to a total of $7.8 million.
Okay, that's what I missed. Thank you very much.
No follow-up. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Sims, thank you for your presentation. We had some presentations at the RDN that you attended with regard to fire hydrants and remediation of wells. Can you just give me a brief history on what's happening with that, what's transpiring there?
So the regional district staff were looking at we're about to present the options to the residents on potentially a water connection. I haven't heard where that's at. The hydrant issue is still yet to be decided, whether we provide hydrants. It seems like a reasonable thing in the location, but that's maybe some discussion to be had on that one. As far as the wells, there was a number of concerns expressed by the residents in the wells, and so what we've done is undertaken some study. We've gone to residents within a kilometre of the site and tested the quality of their drinking water. We've established that baseline. I think all of the residents refused to allow us to measure the quantity or the volume of water coming out of the wells, but they were all happy to measure the quality. So that's what we've done as an established baseline, and then we have a record in case there's changes in the future.
Good, thank you, Mr. Sims.
Thank you. No further questions. Mr. Sims, thank you very much for the presentation. Motion to receive, I will. Seconded, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next up is Mrs. Susan Cudahy, Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. A.J. Hustins, who is the co-chair of the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, to give a presentation regarding the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Kipp and Council. Just a quick introduction here. Thank you for us having the opportunity to come up and do a little short presentation on the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, or the NEDC as it's become known. And I'm simply here to introduce Susan. Susan Cudahy, welcome.
Welcome, Mrs. Cudahy.
Thank you. We've got a bit of a presentation here that may take a little bit of time, so we want to condense it. Some of the things that we want to discuss tonight is just a quick introduction to the corporation, because this is our first formal presentation to Council. A little bit of a review of our Board of Directors action plan that has recently been put into place. Some of the goals, the objectives, and the deliverables, some of the actions that have arisen since that action plan. We'll talk about investment readiness here in the community, and as well talking about marketing Nanaimo, some of our competitive advantage over some of the other players that are fighting for investment, our core programs, some performance indicators, and most importantly, leveraging of the original City Council investment. in the corporation. So just to begin, I would like to recognize, AJ did the introduction, but we do have a good number of our board members here with us tonight, as well as the staff of the NADC and a lot of the supporters, our key stakeholders that we have been working with and have become our partners in the organization. So also like to thank Council as well for having the innovative actions to support the new model. And I think what we're starting to see is what we were hoping for when the organization was created, which is we've established a unified voice from the business sector. We're starting to move forward into what is considered the new reality. So the goal of that movement is to actually achieve becoming the most business-friendly place to do business and an investment destination of choice, which is a transition which is in process. And the reason that we're doing that is because if commercial and industrial tax bases don't improve and increase in a community, then all of the advancement and growth falls solely on the backs of residential taxpayers. And we don't want to see that happen. These tax revenues and these increases in the community tax structures can actually help to fund the social programs that will make up the strength of a balanced area. So from our action plan, we have two key goals. Very simple. We want to be an appealing place to live, work, visit, and invest. And we want to have an incredibly desirable business environment for people that are here, want their businesses to grow, and new businesses that are coming into place as well. Of those two key goals, there were 4 objectives. All of them fairly simple. To establish the economic development program that could achieve this, to expand employment opportunities, which in short means to create jobs. We also want to be a leading investment destination through competitiveness, and we want to have people aware of us globally, internally within the community that we exist, and we're a good place to stay and grow your business and to start a business when you graduate from university, but we want the rest of the world to know about our value proposition for investment as well. So the 5 deliverables that the action plan is based on is a strong structure so that we operate as your organization that is operating effectively and efficiently. We also know that we have to make sure that internally within the city there is an awareness that there is a leadership now with economic development. And we also need to do capacity building, which lets us know and lets you know if we are actually ready to accept investment when it does come knocking on the door. Where are the gaps? Why haven't we been successful in the past? How will we be successful in the future? External marketing is one of the deliverables, letting the world know we exist, but most importantly is the actual performance indicators of a growth in the economy. So these are the 10 actions that have arisen from the action plan. Easy to read and go over. Wouldn't mind going through some of these, but fairly quickly. And most importantly, analyzing some of our investment readiness, which is what I was talking about in terms of being prepared to sell, so that when we go out to attract business into the area, that we are prepared to accept it. So historically, these were some of the indicators that were found to be lacking in our efforts from economic development. We did not have an inclusive site selector data compilation. We didn't have a land inventory that showed investors when they were interested, where are the shovel-ready lands, what properties are for sale, what leases are available for them to situate their businesses in, and that is something that we're undertaking. We also were a little lax in our application process flowchart to show people how they made their way through City Hall, how they actually took it from A to B, and how we fast-tracked that on their behalf. The website was a bit of an issue. It was buried deep within the city's website. Site selectors couldn't find it. Social media wasn't being used, and we weren't actively participating at the level that we should from a global situation with other areas that were competing for investment. So some of the things that we're going to do differently to take away those obstacles is marketing the area at a different level. And one of the things that we've been going through right now is looking at the marketing plan. plan, which is the baseline, and understanding first and foremost who is our buyer, who is the person that we're talking to, what motivates them to buy, when the buying cycle happens, and how they make their decisions. Because we speak very differently to the people buying economic development and investment than we do from the tourism side of things. The other aspect that we've been working through and will be bringing forward is a report on our competitive advantage. And that is primarily looking at who else is out there fighting for investment attraction. Who is not just our neighbors on either side, but who are we really competing against? What is our value proposition that makes us a better destination of choice? What's unique about us that other areas don't have? And drilling down on that value proposition. And most importantly, what has also been missing in the past is understanding who is actually winning the investments in BC. How are they coming in the door, and who's been eating our lunch? So who has been getting the investments, and why did we not get a chance to compete for them? And that's one of the most important parts of us knowing how to do things better in the future. From an external marketing plan, we'll be undertaking all of the regular mediums that marketing are involved with, but there will be an extremely high focus on web and brand new websites for economic development and for tourism. Very happy to say our brand new tourism website launched today. So it's still www.tourismnanaimo.com. You can go and take a look. We've aligned it completely with the travel guide. The second thing that we'll be focused very much on is social media and the use of social media. We'll be developing the new tools, and we're in the process of establishing the partnerships now. From an internal standpoint, we are aware that education and awareness that we exist and what our office can do is a very important part of us being viewed from a business retention and expansion standpoint. We will be doing community updates in the local newspapers, so reports to the community, newsletters which go out on a monthly basis. We will be assisting the DNBIA, who is here with us this evening, as we move forward with a Pride of Place campaign. And that is a real effort locally to attempt to achieve a greater sense of who we really are. Take away a bit of the inferiority complex that you may see every now and then about why would anybody want to come and invest here? Well, we'll tell you why, and we'll tell you big. So that's the Pride of Place campaign. The media mentions, we do a lot of guest speaking, and we will be holding an annual signature event, which will be the State of the Economy in Nanaimo. And you will see that once a year. Our core programs that we're involved in right now, specifically in our BR&E, our Business Retention and Expansion, we are very highly focused on the establishment of a business collaboration center for Vancouver Island. So that is bringing together partners that have been historically working to help business grow, CF Community Futures, DNBIA, potentially Mystic, and ourselves, to house together in a geographic collaboration so that businesses do not run around town looking for ways to get assistance. We're all together in one place. And that model will allow us access to a federal fund, which could very possibly fund the new incubator. For young businesses that want to get off the ground locally, we can house them, hold them in a nest, and let them grow from there. We are currently doing business forums once a month. They're sector-based, and they're designed to hear from each of the sectors within the community, i.e. retail, construction, tourism, manufacturing. What are your issues having a business in Nanaimo? What are some of the obstacles that you have to overcome? All of that information is being held in, from all 12 of those, is being put on USB keys and being given to council. So you will all have those reports back. The other thing that we're involved in is the Terminal Road Brownfield project, which is the 104 properties that are contaminated. We would definitely like to see that area as an entrance through town. Right now we have a little bit of a reverse Hollywood movie set where you drive through what is actually looks like hell, and then you see what's gorgeous behind it. We managed to show it off in a reverse. So what we would like to do, and we are working with the groups in involved is access to funding through the Green Municipal Fund for the brownfield remediation. And we're also working on an angel and a venture capital program, which should be starting within the next quarter. On investment attraction, our focus is on the hotel site lure package, which we're in development on right now. Some assistance has been set aside for the increase in carrier at the airport to have new carriers come into play so that we can get direct flights into Calgary. We're working with the Port Authority right now on cruise ship attraction. I just came back from Sea Trade down in the United States, where we did meet with Royal Caribbean and Disney and Holland America and those organizations to attract more cruise ships in. And we're also working on the investigation of an equity raise for a fast ferries opportunity. So along with the available land inventory, which I mentioned was missing, we will also be down in the next couple of months showcasing Nanaimo at the Global Real Estate Conference. On our tourism programs, we have a new travel guide design, which takes us away from being just environmentally significant in terms of our trails and our water and moves us into urban professionalism. So the new design shows youth, things to do after 6 o'clock at night. We don't roll up the sidewalks here. There is life, there is youth, and there's a place where young professionals can be comfortable. So that's the new design that's reflected in the new website, as I said today. I'm sure you've probably heard about the new Visitor Information Center, which is going to be opening at Northfield and the Highway. Gorgeous vista. We think that's the perfect place for picking up the traffic that's coming up the highway. On our tourism programs, we're also putting a special focus on Newcastle Island and believe that it's a jewel that we need to be doing a better job of letting people know that they have as accessible. We're involved with the Marine Highway, the cruise ship strategy. We're developing a relationship with the arts and culture community at this point, and we're also in partnership discussions with the Nanaimo Hospitality Association. And we are very pleased that March 29th will be ratifying the new Tourism Leadership Committee, which we were thrilled at the expressions of interest and the new people in the tourism industry that have come forward who haven't historically been working with tourism in the past. So that's terrific. On our performance indicators, which were missing in the past, we have actually put 3 levels of indicators into place. These are those. All of Council has been given a full set of the performance indicators. Are a little big, so we did circulate them ahead of time, but they're broken down into 3 levels: foundational achievement, which is because we're brand new; process indicators, which is output measures; and then pure, true, long-term indicators of success that will show that we really are receiving results and having some transformational impact. All of those indicators have been circulated, and they're also being given to the Progress Nanaimo board, because we do, as a board, very much support the integration of those performance indicators into the Progress Nanaimo focus as they move forward, so that we as a full community have a balanced scorecard of how we do stand culturally, economically, environmentally, socially, and politically. And last but not least, on the agenda, we are just coming out of our 5th month, going into the beginning of our 6th, and these are some of the leveraging efforts that we've been able to do with the funding that City Council has provided us. We now have confirmed an additional $272,000 that we have made application and had confirmation on. Those are the programs that we'll be bringing in. Tomorrow night at the Regional District of Nanaimo, we will be signing our 10-year commitment for funding from the Regional District of Nanaimo, which is wonderful to see the region back in the game of economic development as well. I think that speaks highly to their belief in the new model. And we also have in process another request for $78,000 to the province, and hopefully some discussions on a potential for a long outstanding hotel tax revenue, which over the term of hopefully a little more than a year, we will have leveraged Council's investment to only about 50% of our total funding. So in closing, just like to say again, we are very young. We're still in our preliminary phase. We haven't hit our 6-month mark yet, but we are very pleased with the progress to date. We will continue to meet with you on a regular basis and communicate with the public what we're doing, and we believe that together we will very shortly have Nanaimo known as the city above Victoria in every way possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a number of questions. So, Councillor Padgett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Scotty. Really good. Almost too much to absorb, but there's a lot of good stuff. I just need to get back to basics for a minute. You know that the corporation was formed as an at-arm's length entity of the City of Nanaimo, with the Progress Nanaimo Board in between, on which the Mayor, Councillor Johnstone, and myself sit. I think I have a pretty good idea of what my responsibilities are sitting on that board towards council. I would like to hear from you what you believe your responsibility towards Progress Nanaimo is. Okay.
The board of directors is aware that Progress Nanaimo has been put into place to serve as a nominating and placement body for our board of directors positions, which we are in the process of going through right now, and that they will appoint, Progress Nanaimo will recommend to council the slate of the directors for the NEDC. So they will be looking at the performance indicators that we have provided to them and judging the fact that we are moving as a community forward in a very positive manner. That's how we believe that the relationship is between the two.
Follow-up, Chair, if I may.
Go ahead. In
your last slide, you commented that you want to reduce the city's investment by 50%.
Leverage.
Are you going to cut off half of my arm when you do that?
No. Leveraging is basically bringing additional money in on top of the commitment that the city has put into place.
One final quick one.
Well, of course.
There was an email floating around today from someone who was not able to get appropriate Tourism Nanaimo information. What can you say about that?
There was an email that an individual tried on Friday and through the weekend to speak to the kiosk. Unfortunately, we're not open until the May 2-4 long weekend, so it would have been very difficult to find anybody at the tourism kiosk until that time. We have asked for the individual's names so that we can contact them and make sure that we get them the accurate information as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Al, if you're out there, contact me. It's the only name I got. Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Cudahy, for your presentation. In the NEDC Action Plan 2012, it says one of the 4 broad objectives are expanding and diversifying employment opportunities. So, and I was just hoping that you'd be able to explain how the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation plans to do that, especially when the Daily News had just last week expressed how there's companies taking people away from Nanaimo. So if you could just explain that for me.
Sure. Just a 2-part answer to that. Our comments in the paper are accurate on when the north attracts people to work up north. That's a very positive thing for us as well, because when people work hard and get paid well and don't move and go away to work and come back here, that's an influx of cash into the community, and I'm very supportive of that overall. But having said that, to grow and diversify employment opportunities here, the real efforts are focused on the business incubator and the business forum, and the opportunity to take young businesses that are growing and have great ideas for commercialization and patent transfer, and the opportunity to commercialize to the next level. And that is our real focus for getting the incubator into place. Those are the young companies that will grow and hire the next set of employees, and a lot of them will require skill sets at a higher level. So.
A follow-up?
Absolutely.
There's a significant group of young people who leave Nanaimo every year based on whether it be job opportunities or whether there's nothing to do in the city for them. And I also would like to see and know what the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation is going to do for people under 30, especially to keep them in the city instead of losing those individuals who don't just go up north to work and then come back to the city, but are leaving altogether because they feel that the city of Nanaimo doesn't have opportunities for them to flourish.
That's a very good question, actually, and just to touch base on one key point that is often misunderstood is there's an urban legend going around that we have a very high unemployment rate, and that's not true. Our unemployment rate is 6.5%. That is healthy and it's balanced, and it's often reported as being 16%, which was a spike for a very, very short period of time when the university was on strike. So what you don't want to see is your unemployment rate drop below 3%, because that's when you start having company wars. There's not enough people to work. So the idea that businesses we have a lot of people unemployed or people can't find jobs here is a bit of an urban legend here. What we need to do from the 30-plus side is to assist organizations like the YPN so that they can find a committed connection to their own in a professional urban environment, and I believe in that very highly. I also believe in partnering with the university in assisting the graduates, especially the multicultural graduates, that foreign students, to start their businesses here with their parents' investment money so that we grow the business, but we also grow foreign investment at the same time. That's another project that we're really hoping to work with the university on. And I believe as the businesses grow here and new business comes in, the opportunities will exist. I think what's more important is that we let the youth know what opportunities exist. And that's something that we just came from a meeting on and talking about how we do the job fairs of the future. Not the university job fairs, but the full community job fairs. Very similar to what Mayor Nishi did in Calgary. He did an amazing job of letting people know that if they came to Calgary, there were jobs there. But he did it with the business sector, and it's something I feel we can do as well here.
Thank you.
Next in queue, Councillor McKay.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Well, nobody knows better than this council the force, the fact that the NEDC is a force to be reckoned with. But I wanted to ask you, you talked about the lost opportunities for the community. Why didn't we get that one? I also want to know, what do you have in place to monitor the current, the ongoing pulse of the community relative to how business friendly we are, how difficulties that businesses have in having a positive environment in which to work, and possibly an exit strategy, an exit discussion with businesses that leave the community for other pastures.
The exit strategy is a great idea. I think the real focus that we're using to gain that information is through the business forums. They talk openly through a facilitated situation with their own partners, retail, manufacturing, construction. They talk about either the difficulty in expansion and where that difficulty lay, or obstacles that they've had to jump, or the inability to access venture capital, or whatever those issues are specifically to them. That's what we are getting finally together into the report to be able to give to council, to say these are the obstacles that we have to overcome to be business friendly. They come directly from the businesses that are already here and the ones that are saying, if this doesn't change, I can't grow here. That's the most important part.
Thank you.
I skipped the queue here. Councillor Johnson is next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Cuddy, for your presentation. The city is in good hands. I think we're very, very fortunate that economic development is now taken over by yourselves and your wonderful board of directors. And in the 6 months that you've been on the job, I can't believe how much you've achieved. So very grateful. Question for you, though. My passion, of course, was tourism, and I'm anxious about the rest stop and the fact it's not going to be open until May, you say? It hasn't started yet. So I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about bringing in a trailer to start that process now so we can stop that rubber traffic.
Sure, absolutely. We're in discussion right now on the possibility of an ATCO trailer on that site so that we would open May 24 as expected, even though the construction would still be going on. What I need to confirm is that because of the construction involving paving and involving new communication lines coming in, that we can situate ourselves on the site in such a way that the public can still get in and out without having them jeopardized with any security or safety issues on the construction site. I think we're going to be fine. Good. So I think we're going to be able to do that. We just want to make sure that we can bring in the phone lines and the internet lines into the trailer, which is simple logistics at this point. But our goal is to have someone, to have the Visitor Information Center up and operating there, even if it's interim.
Great. I've run into some of our wonderful longtime ambassadors, and they're anxious to get back on the job.
Yes, we've been talking to the volunteers, and we'd love to get them back.
Good. Yeah. And my second question, if I may, tourism for Newcastle Island, Aboriginal tourism.
Yes.
In particular, you've been working with or talking with the Snuneymuxw First Nations to discuss Aboriginal tourism options or opportunities?
We are about to start. We have William Yoakum, who's been involved with the board of directors up until this point. We've had some extensive conversations with the Newcastle Island Society and finding out where everyone is on the chessboard, basically, at this point, as to what their expectations are, what they want to see. And so hopefully in the next little while we'll be able to connect. We have been doing some work with the ferries, the ferries back and forth to the Newcastle to make sure that they're going to be in place properly, things like that. But we have a real strong goal to have the Native heritage honored on Newcastle Island, and that it become a destination of significance in the, for the community. I think it's an untapped jewel.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. One more question. Councillor Bestwick.
One more question? One more person? Or one more person. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Ms. Cuddy, when you first arrived in Nanaimo, you were quoted in the Daily News as stating that a hotel partner, a fast ferry, and senior attractions were the three of your priorities. Now that you've been here for 6 months and you've been engaged with your board, have those priorities changed at all?
I think when I first came, one of the things that we said was we knew that those were the community's priorities. I think the board itself has actually laid out its action plan in such a way that it speaks to business retention and expansion primarily. The things that we went through tonight, the board has never actually stated those. Those were the community's priorities that we had heard. But having said that, if it's an asset that is going to build this community and is in the best interest of this community, we are taking action on it, yes.
Thank you. Another question, Mr. Chair. You mentioned in your presentation that you were engaged in a fast-tracking process at City Hall for developers and investors. And I'm just wondering if you will be bringing forward that model or that procedure, if you will, to the Development Process Review Committee that's been struck and or to Council.
Oh, we'd be more than happy to. Yes, upon request, I'd love to. I have reached out and asked if I could attend the process review committee meetings, but hopefully in the next little while I'll be called to do some discussions on some of the work we've done in other communities, which has gone very well.
Great, thank you. And final question, Mr. Chair. Several weeks ago, Council directed a request that we received from the Infilm Commission from Vancouver Island as it related to potential economic financing or funding. And I'm wondering if any decision has been made by yourself and or board as it relates to the in-film request.
The board will meet on March 29th. It did meet the day before the in-film conference that we all attended. And so what I had asked the board at that time is if they would allow a deferral for a month for me to gain more information and have some time to spend with Mike and understand the situation better. So the board did grant that. And so it comes back to the board on March 29th.
Thank you. And just one comment, Mr. Chair. With respect to the interim between the tourism accessibility or not accessible, so to speak, now that we have the website, I just looked it up, it looks fantastic.
Thank you.
And I'm just curious as to whether or not Devon Park Social Center, because it's a structure that's already existing, lots of parking, easy in and out, so in the interim between now and the time for an ATCO trailer to be put on site in the lobby of the social center, that it's been really remodeled and updated, and it might be considered location, just as a comment for our ambassadors to work in the lobby in a kiosk environment that I don't think that the city would charge you too much for.
I'll take that under advisement and let the city give us some direction on it later, but thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Scott. I have only pushed forward. I still think we are above Victoria, no matter what the papers may say. Appreciate the presentation. Great information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move receipt. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Now we'll move on to 6, delegations pertaining to the agenda items, which is delegations pertaining to the 2012 to the 2015 financial plan. Is there anybody? Nope. Moving on then. So I'll give the mayor's report now. That's it? Oh, I guess we'll give them a second to head off. So without further ado, I'd just like to talk about our strategic plan and an update on it. Our first week of our community workshops in the campaign called Your Voice, Our Nanaimo has recently wound up. Those participating in the workshops, community leadership interviews, and the blogs have provided valuable input. We are looking forward to even more public input as we proceed with this important community effort. This week, corporate strategic planning continues with 4 specialized workshops that invite input from community groups, businesses, youth, and seniors. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you take the time to be part of this. The goal of our strategic plan is to set a policy framework to link all of the existing city plans and to prioritize municipal investments over the next 3 to 5 or longer years. We do want to hear what residents think our priorities should be for moving Nanaimo forward during council's term and beyond. This is your choice to speak out and be heard on important topics affecting Nanaimo's future. The best way to find out about the other opportunities to participate, Your Voice, Our Nanaimo, is to visit the city website or pick up one of the brochures that are around the community. I can't stress enough again how important this is for people to get involved. Thank you very much. That's the end of the mayor's report. So now we'll move on to proclamations. I don't think I need a motion for my receipt of my report, do I? No, thank you. So, that's it, eh?
You can demand one.
I could demand one. No, I don't want one. So, proclamation that the month of April is Canadian Cancer Society's Daffodil Month, and that 2012, April 27th, is Daffodil Day in the city of Nanaimo. Proclaim that the month of April is Parkinson's Awareness Month in the city of Nanaimo. Proclaim that 2012, April 2nd, is Kiwanis International One Day in the city of Nanaimo. Proclaim that April 8th, 2012 to April 14th, 2012 is Public Safety Communications Week in the city of Nanaimo. That April 15th to April 21st, 2012 is National Volunteer Week in the city of Nanaimo. And proclaiming that April 22nd to April 28th is Beta Sigma Phi Week in the city of Nanaimo. There's no commission reports. We'll move into now committee reports. Progress in Nanaimo, minutes of the meeting of December 12th, 2011. The recommendation is before council. Move the recommendation that council receive the minutes. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Staff reports. Communication Safety Development. Proposed Old City Neighborhood RB1 zone. Staff's recommendation that council receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4000.014, which is presented on the bylaw section of this agenda. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Neighborhood Plan, Harewood Area and 3rd Street Corridor. Staff recommendation that council direct staff to initiate the neighborhood planning process for the Harewood area, including the 3rd Street Corridor, as outlined in the report.
Move staff recommendation.
Seconded. Any questions?
Discussion, yeah.
Yes. Councillor Padgett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To staff, if I may, to Mr. Tucker, if I can. Harewood is a very large area, and while I'm very happy that they are next for a neighborhood plan, I wonder if you could explain in terms that all of us can understand how that would happen in such a large and diverse area, particularly, and I may be wrong, but I'm under the impression that there is a neighborhood association that does not cover the whole area. And the reason I'm asking this is that before my first term on council, I attended a town hall meeting, so-called, in Harewood, where a neighborhood association was present and a whole group of other people who were really all very excited and eager to get a process of some sort going. But when it came to the neighborhood association, they were not really prepared to take on such a large job. How do you envision that we continue and go on with this?
Yes, Your Worship. The establishing of the neighborhood plan area is more to do with the shift in development activity, and we're starting to see more and more activity shift to the south end. And at this point, we don't have the detailed policies. We just have the generic policies from the OCP. So the presence of a neighborhood association isn't a precondition to undertake the neighborhood plan. So what we will be doing, we'll be advertising for interested citizens to sit on the steering committee to come forward. Those interested persons will then help guide the plan through as staff and consultants, if necessary, work on it, and then bring forward the recommendations for council consideration.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And then could you explain how the connection works between Harewood and the 3rd Street connector, because that's going to be very much part of it, is it not?
The 3rd Street connector was identified in the OCP as one of the priority areas for planning, for corridor planning. And it's in some ways a testing ground in terms of the policies about corridors in the OCP. 5th Street could also be a focus of that in terms of the corridor and the connection through to the university. And as you extend southward, there are other corridors designated within the neighborhood. So they are all part of the mix of land uses in the Harewood neighborhood, and we hope to look at those in more detail through the plan process.
Thank you for that.
No further questions? I'll call the question. We have seconded.
Yes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Proposed Safer Nanaimo Advisory Committee terms of reference that staff recommend that council reestablish the Safer Nanaimo Working Group as a Safer Nanaimo Advisory Committee and adopt the mandate and objectives documented for the Safer Nanaimo Advisory Committee as presented in this report. Moved. Seconded. And question? Councillor Padgett.
Thank you again to staff, if I may, Mr. Chair. I think it is important that we maybe get someone on staff to explain the reason why the change is being made from the Safer Nanaimo working group as we knew it.
Your Worship, the Safe for Nanaimo Working Group, as it was in existence, was a hybrid committee made up of staff members, RCMP officers, and council members. And the normal process in public sector decision-making involves council as the final decision makers, and that has a committee system to make recommendations. And it's not appropriate that staff vote or participate as members of those committees. So this structure clearly separates the roles of staff as information, support, and recommendation, and the role of the committee members as the elected officials making the policy decisions.
Any further? No, thank you. So, okay, we have the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Development variance permit, DVP 188 at 5502 Fernandez Place. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with a request to DVP 188. Is there anyone in the audience? No?
Staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation that council issue the development variance permit. Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That development variance DVP 189 at 5341 Dunster Road. That council direct staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit number DVP 189 at 5341 Dunster Road.
Move staff recommendation.
Moved, seconded. Any debate? No. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Property maintenance bylaws 1990 number 3704. It's requested that anyone wishing to speak with respect to property maintenance at the properties listed below. We have 225 or 233 Nickel Street, discarded wood and miscellaneous debris. Anyone willing to speak? No? Item number 2, 112 Halliburton Street, bags of garbage, refuse, and miscellaneous debris. Anyone willing to speak to 112? No? 21 Halliburton Street, metal products, discarded furniture, wood, refuse, and miscellaneous debris. Anyone willing to speak to 21 Halliburton Street? No? And finally, 208 Wallace Street, graffiti. Is there anyone willing to speak to 208 Wallace? So hearing that, may I have a motion? All for?
Yes.
Seconded? Any debate? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Unresolved building deficiencies, notices on title, Section 57 to 2805 Fairbanks Street. It is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the unresolved building deficiencies illegal suite at 2805 Fairbanks Street. Is anyone in attendance would like to speak to this issue? Barring that, I'd like to have the motion, the staff's recommendation by resolution, instruct the manager of legislative services to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting 2804 Fairbanks Street, illegal construction, 2805 Fairbanks Street, my mistake, for illegal construction altering a lower floor area to include 2 secondary suites. Registered at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter. Motion? Seconded? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Amendments to the sprinkler regulation contained in the building bylaw. Staff's recommendation, council received a report pertaining to building amendment bylaw 2011 number 5693.04, which is presented on the bylaw section of the agenda. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Subdivision approval, Park and Cash in Lieu, 320 9th Street, sub 00938. Staff's recommendation that council approve the payment of cash in lieu of park for the fee simple subdivision of lands at 320 9th Street, SUB 00938, Lot C, Section 1, Nanaimo District, VIP 83427.
Move the recommendation.
Seconded? We have a couple people to speak. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the executive summary, it says that the property is in close proximity to an existing park located at 270 Ryan Road. Did anyone on staff actually go and look at that property to see if there was a park there?
I'm insinuating that you're figuring it's a pretty natural park.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Anderson. It can confirm that there is a park at that location. Whether the park is developed at this point or not, it's left in its natural state, but there is a dedicated park at that location.
Councillor Anderson, anything further?
This is 270. So 270 Ryan Road is considered behind Lawrence Parkway then, is what you're telling me? Not actually Ryan Road then. It includes all of from 280 Lawrence Parkway to 232 Lawrence Parkway. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, again, Councillor Anderson, that is correct. That is the entire area, which comprises largely the riparian setback around Wexford Creek.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, if I may, please. The value of the cash in lieu is 5% of the land value. I wonder if you could please give us a dollar figure on that. And that and the next one as well, I'd like to hear.
No, we don't have an actual figure for that. It's based on pre-development value, and an appraisal will be done to determine that, but we don't have a specific figure tonight.
Thank you.
Nothing further? Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Johnson asked the first half of my question about the appraised market value of the lands, and that it's been, once we do determine what that amount is, and it has been identified for future acquisition of parks by the city. Now, is that an option, or is that its dedication by choice of the applicant?
In terms of where the money is placed, it must be placed in the Parks Acquisition Fund, if that was the question. In terms of the whether to give cash in lieu value, that's determined in consultation with the Parks, Recreation and Culture branch to determine the needs for parks in the area.
Thank you. So just to follow up, Mr. Chair. So it's a city policy that when we take cash in lieu of park, that those dollars are allocated to park reserve?
It's not a city policy, it's statutory under the legislation that sets the rules for us. It has to go into funds for future parks.
And that is specific to land acquisition then?
Park acquisition.
Park acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. I have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Subdivision approval park and cash in lieu for 1711, 1721, and 1725 Extension Road, sub 00951. The council approved the payment of cash in lieu for park in the fee simple subdivision of lands 1711, 1721, 1725 Extension Road, sub 00951, lot 3, 4, and 5, section 16, range 4, Cranberry District, Plan 8000, Section 17.
Move recommendation.
Recommendation seconded. No debate. All those in favor? Carried. Mobile device policy under corporate services. Staff's recommendation the purchase of computers for council members, council policy be revised to allow personal smartphones to be used for city business. Motion? Seconded. Oh, there is.
Mr. Chair, just before council considers that, we did in our report refer to the staff policy, and in that staff policy refers to the fact that amounts paid to staff for the use of their phone would be a taxable benefit and be reported in the financial disclosure reports annually. Those two aspects would apply to this as well. Should council choose to adopt this policy to apply to council members, that the amounts paid to council would be taxable and the amounts disclosed in those reports.
Does that need to be required in our motion, or that will be included?
That would be included. That's under the...
So we have a motion on the floor. Correct. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, my question would be, could you give me some of the implications of having city information on individual councillors' personal phones, please?
The implications... I think the implications are covered off to the best of our abilities through things like password and the ability to remotely wipe the information. I think that the implications are largely the same as they are for a city-owned device that is in the position of a council member. The risk is if it gets lost in some way, I think the risk would be the same in terms of confidential information either way. So as long as the city has the ability to get access to the device remotely to wipe it, and as long as passwords are employed, I think those risks are covered about as well as they can be. Does that address your
So your Worship, I think Mr. Holmes is talking about security of data, but the other thing to be aware of is just like with any other city computer, the information would be subject to freedom of information, and you'd be obliged to provide access for FOI purposes.
And a follow-up, yes. Through you to staff once again, is what would staff prefer council to have? Would you prefer council to have their own cell phones or mobile devices with city information on it, or would they prefer to have council members have a provided BlackBerry through the city, which they would carry around?
Your Worship, there is the advantage of the staff-owned or council-owned item being used in that if it is damaged or misplaced or lost, it's not a city cost then. It would have to be replaced at the in the possession. I don't know that there is a preference really beyond that.
Just that our preference is that council have access to the information they need, and whatever it takes for you to do that, we'd support. So if you want to have the information on your personal device, we support that. If you want to have it on a city device, we support that. We want to make it easy for you to get the data.
Thank you.
Anything further? No. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just reading the staff's recommendation that the purchase of computers for council members council policy be revised to allow personal smartphones to be used for city business. Could you just define for me what a personal smartphone? I'm not a Twitter guy and all those other new things. So could you please tell me what a personal smartphone will do that the BlackBerry that I have now, the personal computer that I have now, the laptop that I have now, what's the personal smartphone going to do that is going to benefit myself and or my ability to communicate with my colleagues and staff and the citizens?
Mr. Chair, the intention is that if a council member currently has a personal communication device, be it an iPhone or an Android device or even his or her own BlackBerry, rather than carry two devices, one for personal use and then one for the city use, and having two items in your jacket pockets or on your belt, then they can be reduced to one item, and that would be your own. It's just an option available to council members to have their own device and get some compensation for the fact that they'd be supporting city business on their own device.
Okay, and then just thank you. Yes, please. Do I ever appreciate that now? After Councillor Anderson's questions then about the security aspect and accessibility to a personal smartphone versus a city-issued smartphone, is there a difference in terms of the requirements or access that staff have to our personal phones that the city is paying for or reimbursing us for if I were to use my own?
I don't imagine there's any difference. There's no access to the email accounts now except under the conditions of FOI or hypothetically if there were to be some sort of investigation, such as a criminal investigation or something like that. But unless it's FOI, there's no access now.
Okay, so
there's technical access, it just isn't done.
So the only time that an internal access to either phone, as I understand your explanation, would be through an FOI or a technical requirement?
agreed, and I think I would like to ask Ms. Harrison probably to speak on this part of it. I think the only emails that could be looked at were those that were in the custody of the city, and so if there was more than one email address on a individual's personal device, only the city email address would likely be accessible, but I think that would be something for Ms. Harrison to speak to.
My understanding is that that's the case at this time, that it would be the city email that would be required to be accessed to address a request under Freedom of Information. However, if a personal email address was being used extensively for city business, there is a chance that that could end up being, that we would require those emails as well. So I think it's more the subject matter as opposed to which email that could be a factor.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Councillor Padgett.
Thank you. Now that I was going to vote in favor of this, but I'm changing my mind rapidly. I think when we get answers from staff about FOI requests, for instance, that the answer is likely, that is too unsure for me. At my home, I have made a policy from way back when now about keeping things completely separate. I have 2 separate rooms, 2 separate offices, 2 separate computer systems, and from what I've heard so far, I'm not convinced that I would be in favor of combining anything at this point.
Mr. Chair, just for some clarification, without this policy, there is a potential that a personal cell phone emails that are on a personal device could potentially be required for us to receive information from them, depending on the specific use of that. If, as I say, if it was being used exclusively for or extensively for city business, then there may be a requirement to provide that information.
Follow-up? Councillor Padgett?
No, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Johnson?
Well, just to be clear, this is an entirely optional. One doesn't have to purchase or use a city BlackBerry if they don't want to, or allow the use of their personal device. So it's entirely optional. So.
Nothing further?
No, thank you.
That's it.
Councillor Brennan?
I agree with Councillor Johnston. Really, this is a matter for an individual councillor to decide how they want to manage the information from the city that they need to have access to. And it really, I'm ashamed to say I've even entered into this discussion, given that I really think it's a personal decision, and we shouldn't be monitoring how each other accesses information.
A follow-up, Councillor McKay?
Your Worship, if I could to staff, this was just this whole mobile device policy modification was just a direct result of one councillor who chose to use his own cell phone, and the policy previously didn't cover it. Am I correct?
That's correct. I'm that person.
So it's more a housekeeping issue than it is anything else.
Just as well, that this is a practice being employed for staff as well, because it makes sense administratively, and I think it's an appropriate policy, and that's why we're recommending it to council too.
Thank you.
That's it. I will speak on this one. Personally, I packed 2 phones for a while, found it cumbersome, had almost misplaced my phone, find it much easier. People can have access to any of our information if they believe that they can request it. They could look through your personal, they could look through your business, anything related to it. I've checked it out with a couple of lawyers to ask them their concerns, and it's basically open and wide open for them to request things. This is the way I look at it, is an easy way to contact and conduct business, can easily be separated, so I support it. So, without further, we have a motion on the floor.
Question.
All those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Padgett and Councillor Anderson opposed. The remainder of council in favor. The motion passes. So, now we're on to information items only. A report from Mrs. Clift, a report from Mr. Mercer, and a report from Mr. Ricketts. Move receipt of the information. Motion seconded. All those in favor? Any questions regarding the information? Anybody? No? Oh, Councillor McKay?
No,
it was off. I didn't put you out. Nothing further? Reconsideration of bylaws. Councillor Padgett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's moved that zoning amendment bylaw 2012, number 4500.013, RA 286, to rezone 2046 Boxwood Road to high-tech industrial I3 to light industrial I2 in order to permit the use of food and beverage processing be adopted.
Seconded. Okay, Councillor Padgett, did you have anything else? No. No. Okay. Motion. Question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Introduction of bylaws.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the Building Amendment Bylaw 2011, number 5693.04, to exempt multi-unit developments comprised only of detached dwellings from the requirement to install fire sprinklers, pass first reading.
Seconder? Seconded. No debate. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move the Building Amendment Bylaw 2011, number 5693.04, pass second reading.
Seconder? Seconded. Question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move the Building Amendment Bylaw 2011, number 5693.04, pass third reading.
Seconded. Question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Introduction of development bylaws.
Thank you. Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2012, number 4500.014, ZA 1-51, general amendments to create a new subzone, R1B, which applies to R1 zone properties within the Old City neighborhood, pass first reading.
Seconded. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, we are excluding duplexes.
Yes, Your Worship, we are.
Okay. Well, for that reason, I will not be supporting this.
So, okay. Nothing further? Councillor Brennan.
I agree with Councillor Greaves. I won't support this either. I think that we need to continue the drive towards densification. I think that particularly in the downtown core, and I would call this part of that, we need to find ways of densifying. This is one way, and we could use a development permit area so that there is some control over and agreement on form and character. I think that that's the way to go. This seems somewhat exclusive to me to take this part of the city, which is a wonderful part of the city, and exclude it from the densification goal that we have, particularly when we can manage the issues that have been identified, and that is that the form and character may not be consistent with the neighborhood. If we have development permit area, we can make sure that it is consistent. So I'm disappointed in this amendment and discouraged by it, in fact.
So if nothing further, Councillor Padgett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'll be speaking in favor of this for two main reasons. The one is that I do believe that there is a bit of an obligation on the part of the city to protect the only and one and only old city neighborhood that we have. It is special. We have made some special arrangements for them in the fact that we have lowered the height of accessory buildings to between 4.5 and 5 meters. We have kept the minimum lot size to 500 square meters. And as far as densification is concerned, I'm all in favor of infill and densification. We're talking about 16 lots here that would be excluded from having duplexes. That's not a heck of a lot. And then when you compare that instead of a duplex having a single-family residence with a secondary suite in it, I think that densification thing balances out quite nicely. I really do believe that it would not behoove us to flip on this for the third time.
Oh, nothing further. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Somehow I've disappeared, but anyways, I will be voting against this. I think it's important that we continue to densify the downtown, and I agree with my colleagues, Councillor Brennan and Councillor Greaves, that we need to continue to move forward with this. And I've received new information which continues to say this is something that we need to continue doing. I was disappointed with the presentation that we had that showed 70s style and 80s style type of buildings that would be built in the downtown core, when obviously that's not the type of buildings that would be built there. And I think that council has a responsibility to look towards the future, and that we need to densify the downtown. And by flip-flopping on this issue, I don't think it's the right thing to do. So I think that we should go back to the original stance and stay with what we originally said we were going to do and move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing further. Councillor Johnson?
Well, part of my question has been answered. Councillor Padgett has asked it, but clarification, they are 16 corner lots only, right? 16 corner lots that were identified.
Yes.
And have we received letters of complaint about disallowing duplexes, or more letters in favor of this?
In terms of the process that we went through with the neighborhood, we did a questionnaire as part of that process, and in that process there was response from the people who responded to the survey in support of not allowing the duplexes.
More in support of not
About
allowing.
a 2/3, 1/3 split, roughly.
Thank you.
So, there's nothing further. We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? I show Councillor Brennan, Councillor Greaves, and Councillor Anderson opposed. The remainder of council in favor. The motion passes. Councillor Padgett.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2012, number 4500.014, pass second reading.
Seconder? Seconded. No further debate. Okay, the question. All those in favor? Opposed? I show Councillor Brennan, Councillor Greaves, and Councillor Anderson opposed. The motion carries. Bylaw status sheet. Now, correspondence. We have two pieces of correspondence, one from Louise Hart, Intake Coordinator, First Nations Housing, and a letter from Chantel Colson, Outreach and Education Facilitator. Motion to receive the correspondence. Seconded. All those in favor?
No, but
we can.
Okay, yeah.
We're accepting it only.
Yeah.
So all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, any question? Okay. Okay. Mr. Anderson was first. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to the letter from Ms. Chantel Coulson, I would like to make a motion that Council directs staff to write a letter of support for the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange application for the Earth Day Hometown Heroes Award Program Funding Award.
There's a motion now.
Yep.
Yeah, a seconder? Seconded? Any debate on that? No? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, I'm in response to the correspondence from Ms. Louise Hunt, the intake coordinator for the First Nations House of Healing. I would move that council provide the letter requested in support of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the First Nations House of Healing to obtain commemoration funding for an event on June 11th, 2012 to honor and validate the experience of residential school survivors.
Seconder? It's been seconded. Any further? No? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Council appointments. The appointment of Council Liaison to Access Nanaimo Committee. The recommendation that Council ratify the appointment of Councillor Padgett as the Council Liaison to the Access Nanaimo Committee. Motion moved, seconded. I think all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Notice of motion?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. having a little bit of difficulties on how I'm going to word this, but...
You can just inform us that there's a motion coming forward.
Yes, there is a motion coming forward.
And write the issue after.
And it's in regards to our Finance Policy Committee of the Whole meetings. So I'd make the motion that Council directs staff to prepare a report on the implications of having the Finance Policy Committee of the Whole meetings, while held in the Shaw Auditorium, video recorded for placement on the city's website.
So that's a notice of motion. Thank you. Okay. There's no other business. Now, delegations pertaining to items not on the agenda, 10 minutes. Mrs. June Ross, on behalf of the Council of Canadians Mid-Island Chapter, Vancouver Island Water Watch Coalition, CUPE, Island, and it says just Island there, I know that was Spencer, regarding designating Nanaimo as a blue community. You have up to 10 minutes.
Good evening. I'm not doing the major presentation. Paul Manley.
Name and address?
June Ross, number 5, 3400 Rock City Road, Nanaimo. Paul Manley is going to do our presentation for us, and the rest of us want to be up here so we can answer questions at the end if you have questions. And Councillor Bestwick, condolences.
So go ahead, Paul.
Okay, my name is Paul Manley. I'm the chapter contact for the Mid-Island chapter of the Council of Canadians. Just a point of reference that for those of you that don't know about the Council of Canadians, we're Canada's largest citizens organization. We have 70 to 80,000 members nationwide. We are one of 69 chapters in the country, and we have several thousand members in the local area. And we're having our national AGM in the conference center here in October. So there'll be a whole bunch of us showing up here in the fall. We're here with you with our request on behalf of Vancouver Island Water Watch Coalition, the Council of Canadians Mid-Island Chapter, Island Glass Artisans, and the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 401, to request that Nanaimo become a blue community. The Council of Canadians and the Canadian Union of Public Employees has presented a certificate for becoming the first blue community in Canada to the city of Burnaby, the third largest municipality in BC. We are here to ask you to join several other BC communities, Victoria, North Vancouver, Port Alberni is also becoming a blue community, to become a blue community as well. A blue community is one that adopts a water commons framework by taking these 3 actions. Those actions are recognizing water as a human right, promoting publicly financed, owned, and operated water and wastewater services, and banning the sale of bottled water in public facilities and at municipal events. A water commons framework treats water as belonging to no one and the responsibility of all. Because water is central to human life, it must be governed by the principles that allow for reasonable use, equal distribution, and responsible treatment in order to preserve water for their nature and future generations. Canada's waterways are increasingly polluted and depleted by unsustainable industry, agriculture, and municipal activities. Our water services face the growing threat of underfunding and privatization. The need to protect water resources and services is urgent, and governments must play a central role in ensuring water is used responsibly and allocated fairly. The push to privatize Canada's water and sewage systems through long-term operation contracts, or so-called public-private partnerships, P3s, began more than a decade ago. The Harper government has made water privatization a key part of its agenda in the last few years by committing public money destined for water infrastructure to the hands of water profiteers through funding mechanisms aimed at promoting P3s. In the meantime, the bottled water industry sells water that should be a shared public resource for huge profits. Greenhouse gases are emitted and watersheds destroyed as a result of producing and transporting bottled water. Bottled water production places a huge stress on increasingly scarce water resources. Finally, Canada has refused to recognize water as a human right domestically and has actively prevented the adoption of water as a human right in international law. The United Nations has passed a declaration for the human right to water by a vast majority, and Canada was one of the countries that opposed that declaration. Municipalities are responsible for water quality, supply, treatment, and conservation. The adoption of Water Commons framework to address these problems at the community level is crucial in the battle to preserve water and ensure fair access to all. So the first resolution we would like to put forward to Council is recognizing water as a human right. Water is essential to life. No one should be able to control it or expropriate it for profit. The human right to water entitles everyone to sufficient, safe, accessible water for personal and domestic uses. On the other hand, the rights of corporations whose activities drain, contaminate, and destroy watersheds are protected in the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and other international trade agreements and investment agreements. The recognition of water as a human right in Canada would ensure that all people living in this country are legally entitled to sufficient quantities of safe, clean drinking water and water for sanitation, and would require that access inequalities be addressed immediately. Unfortunately, water is not officially recognized as a human right by the federal government, despite the 2010 UN declaration. Responsibility for water is shared between provincial, municipal, and federal governments. It is therefore crucial that the right to water be enshrined at every level of government. A municipal recognition of the right to water would safeguard against a pricing scheme that would limit access to drinking water, ensure all residents have equal access to adequate supplies of safe, clean water, provide citizens with information on their water supply and the operation of their water services, and promote water conservation, treatment, reuse, and source protection to enhance water quality and quantity. Most Canadian municipalities already meet these criteria. However, official recognition of the right to water at the municipal level would cement these principles. It would also create much-needed momentum to apply pressure on other orders of government to play their role in recognizing water as a human right. The second resolution we would like you to consider is promoting financial or publicly financed, owned and operated water and wastewater services. And I'd just like to bring to your attention that there was a resolution passed by Nanaimo City Council in 2006 on this same topic, and that resolution was brought forward by my father. So here I am repeating some of his words, and I'd like you to, City Council, to reaffirm this. Local communities directly own and operate the vast majority of drinking water and sewage treatment facilities, but as the need for reinvestment grows, our cities and towns are strapped with little new funding or revenue to pay to upgrade existing systems and build new ones. Local governments are considering privatizing through public-private partnerships, but they should be cautioned. A P3 is a form of privatization. P3s are multi-decade contracts for private management of public services or infrastructure. They include private financing, ownership, and/or operation. P3s result in higher costs, lower quality, and loss of public control. Very few communities in Canada have experimented with P3s for drinking water and sewage services, but there are lessons we can learn from these that have. Experience shows that privatization means water rates go up and accountability goes down. P3s are more expensive than public ownership and operation because of higher private sector borrowing costs, transaction fees, and the need to generate a profit. The cost of lawyers and consultants alone can set municipal governments back by millions of dollars before projects...
You have about 2 minutes left.
Okay. Before projects even get off the ground. Corporations charge a premium for so-called risk transfer, but despite the cost, governments have not been successful in transferring risks to the private sector. Companies can walk away if a project is not profitable for them, but governments cannot. Taxpayers absorb the cost of failed P3 deals since the public partner is ultimately responsible for delivering services and infrastructure. The credit crisis has made this abundantly clear, as daily news stories tell us that private financiers that are unable to finance private infrastructure projects. Projects are being delayed or even cancelled. Banning the sale of bottled water in public facilities and municipal events. Bottled water represents an enclosure or private takeover of the water commons. Corporations take free-flowing water from its natural state or treated municipal water, put it in plastic bottles and sell it at exorbitant rates. This is something that's been new to us in the last 20 years, and the companies that are making the big profits are international organizations like Nestle, Pepsi Cola, and Coca-Cola, and those are the main companies that are selling water in our municipal facilities.
You have 1 minute left, Paul.
Okay. A growing number of Canadian municipalities, school boards, and other institutions are banning the sale and purchase of bottled water in their facilities and at their events, and we are requesting that you also ban the sale and purchase of bottled water in city facilities. We have the finest tap water available to us, and there's no need for bottled water. So June has passed out a series of resolutions for your consideration, and I don't have time to read those out right now, but we would like you to take that under consideration. Thank you.
So, thank you, and there are a number of questions, too. So, Councillor...
question.
He didn't get one of these?
No, I didn't get one. You didn't get one?
Here's one to look at for now.
Oh, he didn't get one?
So, Councillor Padgett, here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Manley. I obviously have no problem with recognizing water as a human right. That's a no-brainer for me. I have a copy here of your father's motion of March the 13th, 2006, which is a very explicit one. What, in your mind, has happened to that motion? Has there been a measurable result?
I'm not sure. What we're asking, there's 3 measures that are involved in becoming a blue community, and so if that's a motion that you want to reaffirm and pass the other 2, then we can have Nanaimo declared as a blue community.
Then, as a matter of clarification, how does this fit in with, in our particular case, the watershed? You think that should be public?
Should be.
I'm asking Mr. Manley.
I think that the watershed should be public. I realize that it's a fairly costly chunk of land, but Victoria and Vancouver own their watersheds and have good control over their public water, and Victoria has just purchased the Leech River watershed, and that's offset the cost of building another treatment plant, which would cost them about $75 million.
I would think even if we had a chance to buy it, we'd still need a water treatment plant, but that's another story. Final question to staff, if I may. What are the ramifications for the city of Nanaimo if we did ban bottled water in the city, period?
I'm not sure, Your Worship, whether Councillor Padgett is talking about banning it in the city or banning it in city facilities.
City facilities.
City facilities.
So the council has already taken action to not have city bottled water in city meetings and in staff areas. Council hasn't banned it from vending machines and sales in city facilities. To do so would require renegotiation of our contracts with vendors. It's not impossible, but it would take time, and presumably there would be a reduction in sales in those facilities, meaning less dividends paying to the taxpayers. So we could report on that if council asked us to, and we could identify what those costs would be.
Thank you.
Can I just add on here that council may want to have a look at Saanich and Panorama Ridge. They have a machine there that it doesn't matter what size of a container, whether it be a Dixie cup size or a water bottle size, the machine will fill it with fresh water. And our understanding is that those machines are worth about $1,000. So they could easily be put in a lot of our public facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I think that our water is, in some cases, it's reported to be purer than what a lot of the bottled water is. So people think they're getting a better drink by taking bottled water where they could take it from our city taps. This is a little bit off topic, but I just want to ask you, Paul, if you're aware of a documentary that was on TV this afternoon. My husband was telling me about the bootlegging of water, or the pirating of water from the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are being drained, apparently, and water is being stolen and put in large bladders and taken over across the ocean to Asia and other areas.
I hadn't seen that doc. No.
It's very serious. I don't think it could be on television, but I sense that in the future there will be great demand for water and very serious confrontations over water.
Wars over water.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can agree wholeheartedly with number 1 and number 2 in your presentation. Number 3 gives me a lot more difficulty. I get the point. I think there's too many variables involved with banning plastic bottles, water bottles. It's sort of too much like Big Brother stuff. Also, with the firefighters, it's very important for them. They rehydrate before they go to structure fires, and we get cases and cases. I say we. They get cases and cases of bottled water for that specific reason. It's very important. So I can't agree on your number 3 proposition.
Thank you.
So even though they could fill bottles like all the rest of us do from our own taps and rehydrate from that, when you look at the bottled water and you know the kinds of chemicals that are in those bottles, and every time those bottles change temperatures, the chemicals are released into the water. I wouldn't want our firemen to be drinking bottled water, to be honest.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification too, the third resolution is to ban the sale of bottled water in municipal facilities and municipal events. So we wouldn't be telling city workers that you can't have bottled water. We just don't want to see it in vending machines, and we don't want it promoted at city events.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. That clarifies that for me, because I wondered how you would be able to accommodate the firefighters' need for that. But yeah, closer inspection, it says sale. So yes, I'm quite happy to support all 3 of these recommendations.
Nothing further? So, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll take it under buzz, and I'll look forward to anything that's coming from council now.
We'll make a motion.
I'll move receipt of the delegation. Someone?
Move receipt.
Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Could you tell us possibly when the resolutions would be dealt with?
I believe it would take a motion here to move them forward, to get staff to give us a report and bring it forward. Is anyone willing to entertain that motion?
I'm willing to make.
Councillor Bestwick.
I'm willing to make the motion, Your Worship, that, or Mr. Chair, whatever your preference is.
Chair.
I've called you Your Worship all my life. I move that we move to designate Nanaimo as a blue community.
Seconded for the motion? Seconded. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor? Opposed?
So, Your Worship will interpret that as saying that we will have to renegotiate our contracts with our vendors to remove them from our vending machines, because to my reading of the blue motion, you've just banned the sale of bottled water in public facilities. So we'll be proceeding with that.
So prior to the motion being recorded, then we have some debate here. So, Councillor Bestwick, can you follow?
Once there's more debate, I will.
Okay. Councillor Anderson.
Can Ms. Harrison, could you reread the motion for me?
I'm not sure of the specific wording that Councillor Bestwick used, but I understand it was to designate the City of Nanaimo as a blue community.
And Mr. Chair, a follow-up. would hope that Councillor Bestwick would accept a friendly amendment to have staff to make a report on the implications of what that would mean for our municipality, then have council discuss it at a later time.
Yeah. Councillor Bestwick.
I would be willing to accept a friendly amendment on the basis that you're making reference to bringing back, that we direct staff to bring back a report on the implications of banning the sale of bottled water in public facilities and at municipal events.
Yes.
That's a friendly amendment then.
And that report would come back in a timely fashion. But might I just add that any potential for water sales to be reduced will increase potential for Gatorade and other electrolyte sales to increase. So I'm not too concerned about the impact that bottled water in vending machines and or otherwise will have on the revenue generation opportunities, and should not, frankly, impact our ability to eliminate an item at council's direction from contracts that will expire at some point in time. And if we find that it's lawfully not possible for us to do such at the expiration of the contract, then I would suggest that we renegotiate at that time not to include bottled water.
Okay, that's a friendly amendment. Councillor Brennan.
Well, I'm not sure that amendment is as friendly as you would like it to be, as this council would like it to be. I think that this is, all three of these are matters of principle, and that we don't need a staff to report back to us on what are matters of principle. We set the principles, we set the policy. We might ask staff how much this might cost or whether there's any legal implications. But quite frankly, the staff just told us that they would need, I'm not going to say simply need, but they would need to renegotiate contracts. End, period. I'm quite prepared to see that happen. I don't need a report to tell me that we have contracts in place and that we would need to negotiate them. That's fine. So I would be disappointed to see us wait for a report that came back and said you will have to renegotiate contracts.
So am I to understand?
So how about if I say let's do it in seriatim?
In seriatim first, actually, a motion on the amendment first? That's what I'm hearing.
Is this, so this isn't friendly?
So it's not friendly. Because the mover said it was friendly, though.
Yeah, so, I was just arguing against the friendliness of it.
May I just quickly speak to it? The intent of my motion is not just to have staff bring us a report back that says, oh, we would need to renegotiate the contract, but is to see whether or not there's any problems of renegotiating the contract. That's what I would like to know.
Part of my concern would be to throw out the baby with the bathwater. If we had trouble with the bottled water, I wouldn't want to lose the two other parts to start the process, so that's part of my feeling. So, Councillor Brennan, any follow-up to what you had on that?
Yeah, I think we don't often have these opportunities to make decisions clearly based on our values. And this is an opportunity to do that. Staff may come back and say, this is the cost of renegotiating, but they wouldn't come back and say, you can't renegotiate it. There would be a cost attached. I'm willing actually to spend that money in order to make this a lasting principle here in the city of Nanaimo. I think it's very important. I think it's a long-lasting endeavor that we would be embarking on, and I would like to see us be able to do that with a minimum of fuss and say these things are important to us.
Yes. Okay, we have Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have to, I'm going to speak against the resolution at this time. I would like to see deferment on this. We were just handed a 9-page document in the last 15 minutes that we're going to be asked to vote on, of which our city manager has just informed us. The first blush, one of the significant implications. We stayed in here on the water issue as another point that's difficult, whereas the City of Nanaimo tap water is safe, healthy, and substantially more sustainable than single-use bottled water. Why are we spending $69 million on a water treatment plant if the regulatory authorities are saying that no, it is potentially not safe? So I can't make a statement like that. I'd like time to bring this back to our next open public meeting for a decision on resolution.
So you're asking for
deferment.
Deferment. No, on all 3 issues?
Yes.
So
it's 9 pages that we were just given less than 15 minutes ago.
So it was actually 24 minutes and 21 seconds. That's that timer, right? Well, we have a motion to defer with a seconder. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Seconded? Okay. This is not a debatable motion, or is it for deferment?
Council can debate the merits of deferring the motion to a future meeting.
Okay. So is there anybody? Councillor, any follow-up, Councillor McKay, on your motion? No?
No.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be supporting the deferral. And following the clarification of, and I realize that this is maybe a point of order because I'm not speaking to the deferral, but I am not supporting the deferral, but based on the qualification of what the intent of the friendly amendment was after Councillor Brennan made her points. I would suggest that we vote on the amendment, or we'll do the deferral first, and then the amendment as amended, and then the original motion that's in front of us. But I won't be speaking in favor of the deferral.
Okay. Councillor Anderson, on the deferral?
My questions actually, or my comments are actually made to the amended motion.
Okay, so we'll call the question on deferral. All those in favor of deferring? Opposed? We'll show Councillor Brennan, Greaves, Bestwick, Kipp, Johnson, Padgett, Anderson. Opposed. The motion fails. So now we have, I would like a change. I would like to remove the friendly amendment, and make a separate motion to deal in Sari Adam. I think that's what we have to do. Otherwise, the motion is contiguous right now, is it not?
Mr. Chair, the motion, the amending motion wasn't successful as a friendly amendment because the mover and seconder were not both in favor of it being a friendly amendment. So if the discussion right now is on the
original motion,
the report, that would be a motion to amend the original motion, and that would be appropriate to do next.
Do we have anybody clear? And we're looking a little confused. One more time, please. Yeah, one more time.
When Councillor Anderson put forward a friendly amendment, it would require the approval of both the mover and the seconder of the original motion, and Councillor Brennan, I believe, did not support it as a friendly amendment, in which case it would need to be voted on as an actual amendment to the motion.
Okay,
so to proceed with that,
we need a motion,
to
have a report,
to amend the main motion, which was requesting a staff report.
So I have that motion from Councillor Anderson. Do I have a seconder? I have a seconder. Any debate? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak to a couple of the points that Councillor Brennan made with regards to how we don't get to make decisions like this and moral issues and so on, and she doesn't care about the costs attached to whatever it may be for us to go forward with this. But I think it's important that council does its due diligence. It's not that I think that we shouldn't move forward with this, but I think that sometimes we move too quickly in making decisions without having, as Councillor McKay had mentioned earlier, I just got this after they were finished presenting. I think it's not the best decision for us to be making a decision, and I don't feel comfortable myself making a decision on this when I haven't even read this. And I think that council, for them to be making a decision on something that they barely even read, barely even have any knowledge on, I think is regrettable. So not that we are going to be losing the ability to still accept what the delegation has asked us to do, but it gives us the time to think about this, what the implications are, and also getting the report from staff. We'll be able to know fully what we're getting ourselves into, and I think it's a great thing to go through, and it would be great to be designated as a blue community, but I think it's important for myself and for the rest of council to look at what it's getting itself into and make sure that it's making the correct decision. So thank you.
Well, I have just a quick point on, I like the idea of the report only because I've heard of other cities that have in place these bylaws, and I would like to hear about those too in a report from council. So I'll be supporting the motion to have a report. So without further, the questions on the floor. Now this is for the reported amended motion.
The motion on the floor is specifically to amend the main motion to include a staff report.
Yeah, so all those in favor of amending? Opposed? I see Councillor Brennan and Councillor Bestwick opposed, the remainder of council in favor. So the motion to amend passes. Now a motion and seconder for the main motion that includes the amendment to have a report.
The main motion is on the floor, and the amendment has now been added to it.
So we have a question and we have a seconder. So any further debate? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Very well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, Mr. Douglas McBride, 185 Garner Crescent, Nanaimo, regarding remediation and protection of the bank below 145 Garner Crescent. You have your name and address, please, Mr. McBride, and go.
McBride, I live at 185 Garner Crescent.
You have up to 10 minutes.
And I appeared before council 2 weeks ago, and I think council moved to receive my report, and to some extent based on staff assurances as to the state of title. The next morning I ordered searches of the properties and specifically the restrictive covenants, and I'm wanting to deal with that tonight. Briefly, though, I'd introduce for the Shaw viewers the issue here is that the slide shows a picture of the bank below Garner Crescent. For a decade, we've been speaking in favor of protecting that bank, and the developer agreed to protect it, and the City Council agreed to the plan approval based on a restrictive covenant being put on the bank to protect it. Second slide, please. On the second slide, we have a picture of Lot 20 after an excavator had basically stripped it, and we're of the view that that was in contravention of the registered restrictive covenant. Looking at the first covenant on Lot 20, I hate to tell you this, but it's extensive. The first covenant is 133 pages. I'm just going to read it very, very quickly here for you. Well, no, actually, I think I'll only take one sentence out of it. I'll come back to that. There were 2 geotechnical reports done on the property. The first one, the big one, was a general one covering the whole bank, well, the whole subdivision, Phase 3. And then the second report, which has not been registered on title, dealt with the bank specifically. However, there was a third part of the covenant, and that was a letter, and I'm just going to reference that. It deals with the bank in paragraph 5.1, and it says, as stated in the referenced report, the current vegetation cover on the slope must be maintained. I'll go back to the first document. It comes from the original thick report, and the geotechnical engineer said, it should be possible to use all building lots as they have been laid out at the base of the slope. Where the slope may encroach to the building footprint, the following options may be considered. And basically it dealt with setback from the street and the use of a retaining wall, or the preferred route, which is what has actually been constructed on Lot 20 now, is they use the back wall of the foundation as the retaining wall. What is, in my view, crystal clear from this covenant, there's multiple covenants, but from this covenant is that 2 things were envisaged. One, that residences could be built on these lots, and they could encroach into the bank, as we see here, as necessary in accordance with what the geotechnical engineer recommended. But to use the wording from the letter, which is part of the covenant, the current vegetation cover on the slope must be maintained. Now, clearly we can see from this picture that was not done on Lot 20. There is a subsequent covenant, a follow-on, and it's my opinion that nothing in that takes away from the primary covenant, which appears on title first. It could only take it away if it's specifically subtracted from it. I need not get into the third covenant because it doesn't cover Lot 20. It's Lots 6 to 17. It's a further covenant instituting a buffer zone along the back of the properties. Covenants are timeless. There's no time limit here. They run with the land until removed. I just mentioned in my letter, which I believe you have as attachment, the last attachment to your agenda tonight, is that I made reference to, on the second page, to the setback under bylaw 4500 as being 4 meters, and in fact it's 4.5 meters. It's not really relevant because we're not taking issue with the setback, only with the stripping of the bank. So the issue before council is, if you put these things on, are you going to treat them seriously? I see by the Nanaimo Daily News this last week on Friday that, of course, council has decided to put a restrictive covenant on the trees down at the waterfront property. You shouldn't put these things on title unless you're prepared to enforce them. Now, what's required to do that? I mentioned in my presentation 2 weeks ago that there's not a lot of remediation required on this lot. Of all the lots that could have had the excavator on as the first one, this is the one that would do least amount of damage. But the vegetation has been stripped. We think it's appropriate that it be sorted out. As for all the other lots on the bank, so that I don't have to bother you again, is when the people come in for their development building permits, it can be just part of the process that I'm reading from the developer database report from the city for 526 Menzies Ridge Drive, which is lot 20. There's preliminary access approval, site approval, preliminary servicing approval, footing forms. It can be just covered off. The city can say to the developer, now you're aware there's a covenant, you can build your lot on here, let's see your site plans, and you're not to put an excavator on the bank. What could be simpler than that? So that's what I'm asking council to do. If you've put this thing on, and I appreciate the developer did what he said he was going to do, and the city put it on title, then I think it's incumbent upon council to enforce these things. And no yet to be determined or obtained further geotechnical report is going to take away from the restrictive covenant. So I can answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Paget has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I have staff's reactions to Mr. McBride's delegation, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Pache. I'd just like to comment on a couple items that the delegation has stated this evening. First of all, I would confirm that there was a covenant placed on the property at the time of the original subdivision. This was a general covenant that looked at the bank stability in its entirety and essentially identified a no-build area which was parallel approximately with the toe of that existing bank. In that covenant, there was statements that there should be no vegetation removal. It's important to note that the only approval process which Council was part of in this subdivision was the development variance permit request, which at one time included the subject property, but ultimately was approved without this lots. So there was mention about how there's remaining, a significant portion of the remaining lots along the street that were part of that development variance permit and that have a buffer that's covenanted on there, presumably for protection of, a separation buffer between the residents above and these properties. The covenant that is on this property was specifically done for the purposes of bank stability. So yes, the covenant says there should be, the original covenant states that there should be no vegetation removal. The subsequent covenant that was done with the building permit recognized the importance of that statement and said there should be no vegetation removal. When we became aware that the site was disturbed in that area, the vegetation, which was not entirely, but partially invasive species of blackberry and looks like English ivy had been removed. We asked for the engineer to do a subsequent site visit, the geotechnical engineer, to deal with one, erosion issues, and two is to make sure that the integrity of the bank was being maintained and ultimately the site was safe and suitable for the proposed use. So the engineer visited the site early in March and has committed to continually to visit the property to monitor erosion. His opinion is that the bank has not been destabilized or compromised and will continue to monitor it until such time as the area is replanted. So ultimately, we see the site being remediated and the intent of the original covenant being complied with.
A follow-up, if I may. Yes, so the intent is to replant lot 20?
That is both the requirements of the two, as was mentioned, the two covenants, and is the current recommendation of the geotechnical engineer. Yes.
Thank you.
So no further questions? Oh, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. McBride, for your presentation. So what exactly can council do for you in this case? What would you like to see council move forward with?
In light of staff's comments tonight, I think we may be on the path to a resolution here. I think staff should be in the process of issuing building permits for these lots, should be covering it off on their checklist. So that's something. I disagree with staff's statement that somehow the covenant, which is the first covenant registered on the property, is limited only to slope stability. I know that's a view that some people would like to hold. I don't think the document supports that view. I think it is a restrictive covenant that locks up the vegetation on the bank, save and except for being able to build houses in accordance with certain procedures. I think that's pretty clear, in my opinion, in terms of what that restrictive covenant says. But I'm encouraged by what I heard tonight. It sounds like we might be sorting this out for this lot, and hopefully we won't be faced with this on any more of the lots.
Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To staff, could you just clarify what the discrepancy that Mr. McBride has in regards to the first covenant and slope stability?
I guess I can just, Your Worship, to Councillor Anderson, I can just restate what I mentioned earlier, that the covenant, that original covenant, was one that was requested by the approving officer at the time of the subdivision. The primary concern at that time would have been to make sure that the lots that were being created were safe and suitable for the proposed use. It would not have been one of reviewing the bank in terms of ultimately providing a buffer from existing lots or existing neighborhoods. So that covenant, which identified that setback line at the toe of the bank, in my opinion and staff's opinion, was primarily for bank stability.
Thank you.
Nothing further? No? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Move receipt of the delegation. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Now, we're on to question period, agenda items only. Is there anyone who wants to speak to council? Sorry, the gentleman coming here? Do you want to speak to council?
Over here.
Over here to the podium, please. Yanish? Yanish? No, I don't think so. No? Need your name and your address.
Janusz Dzikowski z Polski Rzeczpospolitej Ludowej, 21 Halliburton Street, Nanaimo. I understand there was an issue that came up before I was present here concerning 21 Halliburton.
Yeah, we passed a property. What was it? I have to go back. We did pass a property, 21 Halliburton, metal products, discarded furniture, wood, and miscellaneous items. The recommendation that pursuant to the property direct the owners of the following properties to remove the material as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. So you have 14 days to proceed currently.
I spoke with the city bylaw officer at 4 o'clock with at his office downtown and we had the third load with the pickup. We've been moving all day. He informed me at that time that he was there in the morning and took pictures, the pictures that were probably presented here. And he said that it was out of his hands at that point. At this point, basically the work has been done. Whatever else might remain that the city bylaw officer may have in question can be examined and brought to my attention. I am the general contractor on that site. And the matter has been dealt with, so I'd just like to bring it to your attention, sir.
So thank you very much, Yanish. What I understand is staff will probably look at the property and review it and see whether the notification has been completed. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone further? Questions? Agenda items only. Your name and your address, please.
Hi there, Matthew O'Donnell, 771 Arbutus Street. I have a question as it pertains to economic development in Nanaimo, pertaining to the downtown core. I was wondering, obviously there's the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association and the Economic Development Corporation. They're working on improving the economy here in Nanaimo. But what is City Council, specifically, what do you have in mind to help improve small businesses, specifically in the downtown core? And how could we make it better? I do know, for instance, when the cruise ships come in, a bus is arranged to take them up to the north end, up to the shopping malls and whatnot. But is there anything that Council's doing to help promote the local businesses in the downtown area?
Well, if I can, obviously the DNBIA has been supported by Council. We work with Economic Development. They're looking at promoting and continuing the businesses in the downtown core. But Councillor Padgett, who's on the Progress Board, will be able to help.
Just to augment by saying that Mrs. Cudahy has put emphasis many times now on the fact that it is really important to not only retain small business in the downtown core and the rest of Nanaimo, but to take measures that we get more of it. So that is being looked at.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you. Any further questions of Council? Agenda items only. Going once. Motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you.